Welcome to Scott Fox After 9. This episode is a setup episode. I'm going to set up all the different things that could happen over the next couple of days. So enjoy this one. There's a lot of audio to play for you. I think you're going to find this really, really informative. On this episode, again, second day in a row, Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew, Ontario Premier Doug Ford, and U.S. President Donald Trump are going to be featured on this one because yesterday they all had some really interesting things to say about where we find ourselves right now. Where is that? To be honest with you, I don't really know. I'm not sure where this one is going to go. We've got Prime Minister Mark Carney and a delegation over in China. Mark Carney wants to try and work out a trade deal with the Chinese because things are not looking good with the Americans. The problem is China really a better trading partner than the Americans? Are they? Here's the thing. The Chinese have interfered in our elections. There are so many human rights allegations against the Chinese regime. They are someone that Prime Minister Mark Carney himself described as the biggest threat to Canada and our biggest adversary as well. They're also a major irritant for President Donald Trump. Can we get a deal done with America if we do a deal with China? And what is that deal going to look like here at home? A lot of people think that Prime Minister Carney, in order to make any progress, is going to have to drop the tariff on Chinese-made electric vehicles. The Chinese really want that. In exchange, I'm sure they would probably agree to drop their tariffs against Canadian seafood and Canadian canola. Canola or canola oil? Maybe it's both. Well, Ontario Premier Doug Ford does not want to allow Chinese-made electric vehicles in Canada. I'm going to play some of that audio coming up for you. We're going to talk a little bit about cars. We're going to talk about trade and a whole bunch more in this episode. Let's start off, though, with a clip that basically went viral instantly yesterday. U.S. President Donald Trump speaking at the Ford plant in Michigan. Here's the president.
To build their product in the USA.
You don't think you're going to renegotiate USMCA?
Well, I can. It expires very shortly, and we could have it or not. It wouldn't matter to me. I think they want it. I don't really care about it.
So it might go away. So you're talking about getting rid of USMCA.
No real advantage to us. It's irrelevant to me. Canada would love it. Canada wants it. They need it. Because we don't need Canada product. That's the thing. You know, I want to be a nice person, but we don't need. I want to build the cars here, not in Canada. We used to build cars in Canada. Now, the Canada cars, the Canadians are moving here to build cars. Same thing with Mexico. Same thing with Japan. Japan's paid us billions and billions of dollars for the privilege of making cars here and selling cars.
Okay, to summarize what the president just said, he likes Canada. He wants to see Canada do well, but not at the expense of the Americans. And President Trump has decided he wants the auto industry that kind of got split between Canada and the U.S. He wants it repatriated back to America. Now, we had an opportunity to do a deal with the president back in July. Nothing happened. We had an opportunity to do a deal with the president in November. Apparently, it was all but a done deal. Then Ontario Premier Doug Ford released the tariff ad and blew that up. I don't know if there is going to be another opportunity to do a deal with the Americans where we have a whole lot of leverage. We used to be able to hold oil over them, but as you know, they have done whatever it is they did in Venezuela, and now for some reason the U.S. has basically unfettered access to Venezuelan oil, and I don't know that they really need Canada. I'm sure it would be nice, but I don't know that they need us. The president may not be exaggerating anymore when he says we don't need Canada for anything, but he still seems like he might be open to a deal. Is that going to get blown up the second Prime Minister Carney does a deal with China? China's already urging Canada to not have such close ties with America. It seems like there's a bit of a push and pull or tug of war happening here between the Americans and the Chinese for Canada. And both of them are playing pretty coy. We're running around hat in hand begging for a deal with anybody, and they hold all the cards. What's going to happen here, do you think? I'm very, very curious. Tell you what, let's go to Queen's Park. That is the Ontario Provincial Legislature. Yesterday, Ontario Premier Doug Ford held a news conference there, and he answered a lot of questions on a lot of different topics, and certainly cars came up. Here's Premier Doug Ford.
I'll open it up to questions.
Premier, did you talk about the tariffs that, not the
tariffs between the United States and Canada, the other tariffs with China, the 100% EV tariff. Prime Minister Carney is headed to Beijing. It sounds like he's in discussions with the Chinese government about lowering that tariff in exchange for canola concessions and other things. Are you worried about that?
I'm very concerned, and so are my friends in Michigan concerned. When you have China coming in at a low cost of EVs, is concerning. We as everyone knows, those parts go back and forth between Ontario and Michigan 7-8 times and get assembled in Michigan or get assembled here in Ontario. And when you have the Chinese government wanting to dump cheap Chinese parts and cheap vehicles here, it cost Canadian and American jobs. So I'm absolutely 100% dead against this. I have not talked to the Prime Minister. I will speak to him and tell him our concerns. And this is nothing against the folks in the canola business or soybean. We have a thriving soybean business here too. So it's not about them. I fully understand why Premier Moe is concerned, but he's protecting Saskatchewan. I'm protecting Ontario. The 500,000 jobs in the auto sector, that's what I'm focused on. And it works back and forth between Michigan and Ontario and many other states. So it would not be good for Ontario and Canada, and it sure the heck wouldn't be good for the U.S., and it wouldn't be good when it comes to negotiating with President Trump.
Premier Ford is absolutely right. If we do a deal with the Chinese that would allow Chinese-made electric vehicles into our auto market, I don't think President Trump is going to like that very much. So what do? Do we try and do a deal with the Chinese, or are we going to go back to the Americans and try and work out a deal with them? Well, first off, we got to basically walk away from the Chinese deal. Whatever it is that Prime Minister Carney is cooking up over in Beijing, we have got to axe that deal, because I don't think it's going to be possible to do anything with President Trump as long as we're dealing with the Chinese, particularly if we're going to allow Chinese-made electric vehicles into Ontario. You know, one of the things I don't understand is what the opposition is to the Chinese-made EVs. I understand that our automakers don't want any competition. I get it. But I think by and large, people would like vehicles to be affordable. And right now, a lot of vehicles that are available in Canada and the USA are quite expensive. If the Chinese can make an EV, which I thought we all agreed we were supposed to be going towards, and it could be cheaper, why wouldn't we at least give people the option, let them have a choice? Maybe in some way, it might bring down the prices of North American vehicles. Or is everybody going to abandon everything North American and everybody's going to be driving a Chinese vehicle soon? I understand the concern. I really do. And I'm sure that the North American automakers would like to continue making the money they're making. But at some point, we have to think about the consumer here too, don't we? I don't want to see anybody lose their job. The auto sector has been rocked. But I kind of like the idea of affordable vehicles entering the market. At least let us look at them, maybe take one for a test drive, see what they're like. Isn't competition a good thing? That's what I thought. Now, maybe there is something to what Premier Ford is suggesting, that China, if they want to sell their vehicles here, should open up a plant here. They should manufacture here. That seems like a fairly good compromise. Can Prime Minister Carney work that one out? Well, that remains to be seen. Here's more of Premier Ford.
But Premier, you said the other day, though, that if the Chinese automakers came in and invested in a plant, hired Ontarians, made products here, that you'd be open to that.
There's a difference there. Okay. You can't just dump cheap vehicles here. If you want to open up a plant, and I'm not speaking to for our American friends or for the president, but if they're willing to come here, invest in a plant, just like GM, Stellantis, Ford, Volkswagen, Honda, Toyota, and come here and manufacture and create jobs and create parts here, well, now we're on a whole different page. But if you want to just come here and dump vehicles that will hurt Americans and Canadian jobs, in my opinion, it's unacceptable.
But you haven't discussed this with Prime Minister Carney at all?
Oh, he knows how I feel very clearly. I'll be reaching out to him, and we're going to meet up in Ottawa with a COF meeting. So I'll express.
Yeah, but he's in China now, though. Shouldn't this conversation have occurred?
I will reach out to him, and I'll text message him, and just tell him our concerns.
I don't know if I believe Doug Ford that he hasn't spoken to Prime Minister Carney. Do you believe that? He knows how I feel. I haven't actually reached out to him, though. That's a weird one, just assuming the Prime Minister was watching the news and understands fully how the Premier of Ontario feels. That's strange. You know what I want to understand is, what are the rules here? Because Premier Ford is saying, nope, we're not going to allow China to come and sell electric vehicles into our market unless they build a plant here, manufacture here, hire people here, and carry on that way. But there's already a lot of vehicles that aren't made in Canada that are for sale in Canada. Lots of them. We don't make Porsches in Canada. We don't make Lamborghinis in Canada. We don't make Mercedes in Canada. And some of these are very, very popular vehicles. So what exactly is it we're after? Or are we just trying to create hoops to try and hold the Chinese off as long as we can? I'm really not sure, but it seems just a little bit hypocritical. If somebody at Queen's Park wants to reach out and clear that up for me, let me know exactly what the rules are here. I would love to hear from you.
Do you know any Chinese companies doing what you're describing? Any Chinese companies who would invest in Ontario like that?
Well, we'll have to see. I'm going to sit down with the Prime Minister when he gets back, find out what the conversation is, and we'll go from there.
Premier, you said many times that there are...
The fact that Scott Moe is going to China with the Prime Minister, isn't that a pretty strong signal from the Prime Minister that he's looking to back down on EV tariffs in order to save another Canadian economy?
Well, Scott's one of my closest allies, and he's going there to protect jobs and canola jobs in Saskatchewan, as he should. I'm doing my job as Premier of Ontario to protect jobs here. So wouldn't it be great if we could protect all the jobs? But let's see what happens when they come back, and we'll have a conversation with both of them.
Speaking of other premiers,
yes.
Wab Kinew is actually going to visit the Crown Royal Distillery facility today in support of what they're doing there. Have you spoken with him? Do you know what he's thinking at this point? And
before Premier Ford answers that question about Manitoba and Crown Royal, let's hear what did get announced yesterday when Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew went to the Crown Royal factory in Gimli, Manitoba.
Well, as you can see, they've rolled out the purple carpet. They rolled out the purple carpet here in Gimli, Manitoba, where Crown Royal employs tons of Canadians. We're talking about good-paying Canadian jobs supporting our Canadian community here by producing Canadian whiskey, Crown Royal. So I'm here to show support for the workers here and to let the folks here in Gimli know that we got their back. And as a result, I'm calling on Premier Ford to stop his plan when it comes to LCBO taking Crown off the shelves. Now, we know that he's got his issues with the Diageo, but here in Manitoba, we're very, very proud of this iconic Canadian brand that has been putting people to work in this community for many, many years. Just a few minutes ago, I was talking to one person who worked here at this plant for 50 years. That's not just a job, that's a career. And when we're talking about Canadian whiskey, it's not going anywhere. The stuff has to be made in Canada in order for this brand to remain viable. So I understand Premier Ford has his different priorities that he's working on, but when we're talking about Team Canada, we have to stay united across the provinces. And having a Team Canada approach can't mean targeting jobs in another province. So I'm encouraging Premier Ford to change his mind. I know he's done a lot of press conferences on this already, but coming to you from the place where Crown Royal puts food on the table for many Canadian families, I think it's the right move here.
Okay, yeah. Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew saying it the way it is. You've got a Canadian company employing a lot of Manitobans and people across the country, really. It's a product that's made from Canada, made in Canada, and really made for Canadians first and foremost, but it's also very popular around the world. But of course, in Ontario Premier Doug Ford, he doesn't like the fact that one of the bottling plants in, I believe it's Amherstburg, southwestern Ontario, right near the Detroit border, they're closing down one of their bottling plants. Premier Ford doesn't like that, and ever since then, he has been threatening to pull Crown Royal off the shelves at the LCBO. I don't know anybody that supports this. Anybody who's connected and following, I don't know anyone who actually supports Premier Ford on this one. You've got the Premier of Manitoba saying, don't do it. There's all kinds of Canadians saying, don't rip a Canadian product off the store shelves. Will Doug Ford, finally listen to his fellow premiers and many, many, many citizens across the country? And will he please keep a Canadian brand in the LCBO?
I talk to Wab frequently. I just got off the phone with him probably an hour ago. He did tell me he's going up to the Crown Royal plant, and I told him, God bless him. He's doing his job. He's trying to protect jobs in Manitoba. I'm protecting jobs here in Ontario, and he respects that. I respect him. We have a phenomenal relationship. He invited me over to the Jets and Maple Leafs game. That's happening. By the way, he owes me probably a dinner at McDonald's because I won the last bet, and he wants me to come there and go to a game with him. But he's a fine gentleman, I'll tell you that.
What I don't understand here is how Premier Ford can say, yep, I totally respect Wab Kinew for trying to protect Manitoba jobs. And I totally respect Premier Moe in Saskatchewan for trying to protect Saskatchewan jobs. But I'm the Premier of Ontario, and I got to protect Ontario jobs. Well, the horses are out of the barn. The plant in Ontario is closing. Those jobs are gone. So clearly, they were not protected. If we pull Crown Royal out of the LCBO, that will very, very, very likely lead to more jobs lost, probably in Manitoba. If we don't get a deal done with China, and maybe even allow them to sell their electric vehicles in Ontario or across Canada, then canola farmers are going to feel it real bad in Saskatchewan and across Western Canada. If we don't get a deal done with the Chinese, it's entirely possible seafood producers in the Atlantic provinces may also go through a lot of hardship. I don't understand what happened to Team Canada. Weren't we all on the same page? Weren't we all in lockstep? When can we get to a place where we're back to where we were? And what happened to cause this divide? You know, at one point, and it wasn't that long ago, there was no daylight between the premiers. Everybody was on the same page. Everybody wanted something that was good for Canada overall. Doug Ford is so stubborn on this Crown Royal thing. It's going to cost Manitoba jobs. I don't blame Premier Kinew if he rescinds that invitation and says, you know what, forget it. Don't bother coming to Winnipeg. Don't bother coming to Manitoba. You are a job killer in our province. And frankly, I don't blame Premier Moe if he doesn't want to talk to Premier Ford anymore either, because frankly, this position is completely unreasonable. Nothing is going to happen without compromise, and it seems like the only person who doesn't want to compromise is Doug Ford. And if he doesn't compromise, again, it's going to cost jobs in other parts of Canada. And the Ontario jobs are already gone. Diageo's not going to change their mind and say, well, you know what? We listened to Premier Ford and we decided he was right. We're going to keep this plant open. It's just not going to happen.
Still planning on taking Crown Royal off the shelves?
As sure as I'm talking to you, that Crown Royal is coming off the shelves.
Transportation minister was asked earlier about it, but I wanted to get your take on it. Apparently the issue is the heaters used on the switches, they're electric, should have maybe been gas. It was the same problem that affected the Ottawa LRT. What do you make about the non-stop issues with Line 6?
Well, I wouldn't say they're non-stop. You always have kinks in the rails, excuse my pun there, but once they start moving, they'll start moving pretty smoothly. But I always, rather than always talking about the negative, I like talking about the positive. As I was telling our friends from Michigan that we're building the largest transit system in North America. We have the Yonge Extension, the Eglinton West, the Eglinton Crosstown, which hopefully they'll announce early February. The Mississauga LRT, Hazel McCallion line, the Hamilton LRT, and the Ontario line, of course. So I think they were pretty impressed that we're spending close to $80 billion when it comes to transit, another $30 billion when it comes to expanding our roads, and so there's always something that's going to go wrong at the beginning, but we're going to get it fixed, like anything else.
Are you concerned about those same problems coming up on the Eglinton Crosstown, and is that why there's no opening date for Line 5 yet?
No, we're working with the TTC. They're the ones choosing the date, so I think it's going to be early in February. We'll be there, and they've run it. I find these numbers, are these accurate? 500,000 kilometers back and forth testing prep? Over that, than 500,000? Almost 2 million miles testing it out. Good thing is, a lot of it is going to be underground, so that resolves a lot of the weather conditions.
Premier Ford trying to defend what is basically indefensible. The Eglinton Crosstown LRT, which, just so you know, is a fairly, relatively short transit line for an LRT that's going to go across the top of Toronto. It's been worked on for 15 years and it's still not done. Premier Ford talked about the LRT in Hamilton. Not even close to done. I don't even think they've started. He talked about the LRT in Mississauga, the Hazel McCallion line, still under construction. There is the new one that they just opened along Finch in Toronto, plagued with issues. The question specifically, and I believe that was from Richard Southern from City News, was very simple. The switches keep freezing. Apparently, when they built this line, they did it just like the Ottawa LRT, which has also been plagued with nonstop problems. This is what we get for $80 billion of investment into transit. Nonstop issues and very unhappy commuters who would like to rely on transit, but can't rely on transit because it's unreliable. Apparently for this Finch line, they used electric heaters for the switches. Apparently the electric heaters don't work very well. The recommendation is we should have gone with gas heaters. So I don't know if this was some environmental woke ideology that made us go electric instead of gas, like the recommendation. It was electric in Ottawa and it was a disaster. They're saying we should have gone with gas in Toronto, and if we didn't, and we're seeing all these issues, then I think we understand what the problem is here. It's crazy. People want results. They want to go and stand at the stop, wait for their LRT or their bus or whatever, get on it and carry on with their day. Not knowing from 1 minute to the next whether or not it's actually going to be working is crazy. The Premier mentioned the Ontario line. That's another new subway line in Toronto. Great. It's not done. And I know that these things don't happen overnight. I just don't understand why we're taking a victory lap on this. You know what I mean? Very, very frustrating. The Premier doubles down on the fact that he is pulling Crown Royal out of the LCBO. I do want to point this out because I am a huge advocate for it's time to privatize the LCBO. I've seen enough. The way Premier Ford is weaponizing the LCBO for his own personal agenda against Donald Trump. And again, as I've said many times, and I'm going to keep pointing this out, this was an unprovoked attack against the Americans. They never banned our alcohol in the U.S. Never. We banned theirs. And that's becoming a real pain in the ass for a lot of people who like a specific whiskey or a specific tequila or a specific wine. Doug Ford decides what you drink, and if you dare challenge him, you're the problem. That's the attitude coming out of Queen's Park. Adults are not capable of making their own choices, so Doug Ford himself will make those decisions. We got to privatize the LCBO. I think Doug Ford has given us all the evidence we need that this needs to be done, that we cannot trust that Crown Corporation to be run by one guy who's got a vendetta. This is the opportunity. If you are an aspiring lawyer, take a couple hours and write the application. You're going to apply to open a private liquor store in Ontario. It's going to be denied because we don't allow that. Only the government can participate in this government liquor monopoly. Once that gets denied, you challenge that in court. You could disband the entire LCBO with one ruling. Take it away from the province altogether. This little toy that they play around with, play games with, even though it's not theirs, it belongs to the people. It's time to take it away. Somebody apply for a private liquor store, wait for it to get denied, and then we go to court. And we're going to sue to break up that illegal government monopoly. Now, it hasn't been deemed illegal by the courts, but in my estimation, it is. It's antitrust in just about every way. Completely restricting competition is wrong. Having Doug Ford be the one guy, the sole decision maker for what Ontarians drink, even though there's thousands of employees at the LCBO, I don't understand why we're allowing this to happen. It's as simple as that. Somebody apply to open a private liquor store. Wait for it to get denied. Then you go to court and challenge it, and the court could completely disband the LCBO. It's that simple. I'm going to move on. There is a lot of other things that I want to play for you in this episode of Scott Fox After 9, and thank you for hanging in so far. A couple of things from U.S. President Donald Trump. Yesterday, he talked to the media several times when he was going to Detroit, when he was in Detroit, and when he got back from Detroit. One of the questions that came up was about his it's not a suggestion, actually. He's doing it. He's capping credit card interest rates at 10% for 1 year. For those who haven't looked, you're probably paying between 25 and 30% interest on your credit card. President Trump says that's not fair.
I think that people that are paying 28% interest should be protected. We're talking about for a 1 year period, but when you have a bank, whether it's Jamie Dimon or anybody else, charging people 28, 32%, 30%, 31%, one case 35%, no, I'll help those people. That's all right.
Sanctuary City, sir, in your speech, you said...
It's a 1 year, 10%. Let the people have a break.
Here. Let the people have a break. The cost of living is too high in the U.S. as well. The U.S. has got an inflation problem. They also have high interest rates. We have to look for things that can make life more affordable right now. And neither government, well, I shouldn't say neither. The Americans seem to understand it. They seem to be working on it. Their credit card interest rate is going to get cut by more than half. They soon may not even be paying income taxes thanks to tariffs. They are getting a big break on some of the stuff that they used to pay tax on. For example, overtime and tips. There's now no longer an income tax on income from overtime or income from making tips if you're in the service industry. That's another huge thing. Their inflation is starting to show signs that it's coming down, and their interest rates are about to go way down. Things are not going to be the same in America in 3-4 months that they are right now. Their cost of living is going to go way down. We need to do something for Canadians as well. Capping credit card interest rates, that would be great. Lowering Canadian interest rates would be massive to immediately put more money back in people's pockets. And if we can't cap the interest rates on credit cards, and if we can't cut interest rates, then there's only one other option. We have to cut taxes. And I don't mean that piddly little tax cut that we got back in June that got completely eaten up anyway because Carney just raised the payroll taxes. I mean a serious income tax cut. And don't make people wait until they file their taxes and get a refund. I mean, stop taking so much off of our checks.
On Greenland, sir, the premier of Greenland said today, we prefer to stay with Denmark. Do you see that as the final
said
word?
That?
The premier of Greenland.
Well, that's their problem. That's their problem. I disagree with him. I don't know who he is. Don't know anything about him. But that's going to be a big problem for him.
Ooh, yikes. What does that mean? That's going to be a big problem for him. I think everybody needs to start getting used to the fact that Greenland is about to become American. And there's just nothing that's going to stop that. President Trump's position on Greenland is very simple. Denmark didn't do anything with it, and they aren't really doing anything for Greenland. So Greenland's going to go somewhere else. And if the U.S. doesn't do it, then Russia or China are going to take Greenland. And I think for us here in Canada, we would probably rather the Americans have it than the Russians or the Chinese. But who knows? I'm completely turned around now. I thought up until just last week when it was announced Prime Minister Carney was going to China, I was still going on the last direction from Prime Minister Carney that China was our biggest threat. Never in a million years did I think he'd be flying over there, hat in hand, looking to do a deal and possibly drop the tariffs against the Chinese. By the way, those tariffs are in place because the Americans also put tariffs on the Chinese and their electric vehicles. Yesterday, President Trump was asked about allowing Chinese vehicles into the USA. Doesn't seem like he's going to give up that tariff.
Do you ever allow Chinese autos into the U.S.?
Well, as you know, we have a tariff on Chinese autos. And in Europe, China's taking over the auto business, I would say is a nice statement, but that's the way it is. And here, what is it, 100%? We have 100% tariff on any car coming in from China. So that makes them able to do very nicely against China.
Okay, President Trump, he's just not going to do it. He's not going to allow it. He's going to keep a 100% tariff on there. Rather than just ban them, it's a 100% tariff. And we too could buy a Chinese-made EV here in Canada, but again, it's a 100% tariff. Who's going to do that? I think really the incentive to buy a Chinese-made electric vehicle is they're cheaper than the current electric vehicles that are available, ones that are made here in our own communities. These ones from China would be a heck of a lot cheaper. I'd still like to know more about that. I'm going to switch gears here, though. We are watching what's going on over in Iran, and I think just about everybody that I've spoken to anyway is behind the Iranian people 100%, hoping that this works, hoping that this is the one that releases their people from the oppression from the Iranian regime. It seems like President Trump is squarely on the side of the Iranian people as well. Here he is yesterday encouraging them, keep resisting.
To all Iranian patriots, keep protesting, take over your institutions if possible, and save the name of the killers and the abusers that are abusing you. You're being very badly abused. If the numbers are right now, I hear 5 different sets of numbers. I hear numbers. Look, 1 death is too much. But I hear much lower numbers, and then I hear much higher numbers. But I say save their names because they'll pay a very big price. And I've canceled all meetings with the Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. And all I say to them is help is on its way. You saw that I put tariffs on anybody doing business with Iran. Just went into effect today. And I say make Iran great again. You know, it's a great country until these monsters came in and took it over.
For those who don't think the Iranian people are being oppressed, that they're living in basically a dictatorship, they're killing people that are protesting the regime. They're killing them. President Trump is right. I, too, have heard many different sets of numbers about how many people have been killed. I think the Iranians are acknowledging it's about 2,500. I've also heard numbers that were almost triple that. We can't allow this to happen. I'm going to say something to President Trump. I'm glad you're on the side of the Iranian people, but it's really time to do something. You know, you say help is on the way. The Iranian people are putting on the fight of their lives, and they need some backup. They need some help. Part of the reason that they're empowered to go out there and do that is because the Americans said, we'll have your back. I hope that that's true, because something's got to happen quick. If you've got their back, then you better have their back, President Trump. Get over there and do what you have to do to prevent any more loss of life amongst the civilians who are just trying to get out from under oppression and have their freedom. More of President Trump, this time on the tarmac, talking about Iran.
Iran says that it will retaliate in the instance of U.S. strikes against U.S. assets in the Middle East. What do you say to U.S. service members about why it is worth the risk to intervene in Iran?
Yeah, Iran said that the last time I blew them up with the nuclear capability, which they don't have any longer. So Iran said that the last time. They better behave.
Whoa, 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 whoa. What did he just say? Man, that's some gangster stuff. I got to hear that again.
That it will retaliate in the instance of U.S. strikes against U.S. assets in the Middle East. What do you say to U.S. service members about why it is worth the risk to intervene in Iran?
Yeah, Iran said that the last time I blew them up.
It's the one and only Digo Double G. Snoop Dogg.
Man, that is... You know, love him or hate him. Love him or hate him. You don't hear stuff like that from world leaders very often. Holy cow, man. You know what? We're getting a little low on time here, so I'm going to try and speed up to just a couple more things that I want to get on here for you. President Trump, I announced, was in Detroit yesterday. He was there at the Ford plant, and he was talking about the great comeback of the American auto industry. Here is him with the president of Ford. He's talking about their U.S. expansion.
We need to rebuild our industrial base, and that's been a priority of yours.
And we're adding a combustion vehicle, a combustion truck, affordable one in Tennessee to the president's note. That's what these policies are doing for Ford. We're going to actually expand one of our existing plants and make a different kind of truck there.
Tariffs?
Yeah. Yes, and the EPA, the relief of the...
Tariffs and the relief I gave them from the most ridiculous standards. We had put 3 computers on a car in order to save about this much gasoline from a glass. It was crazy, but very proud of them. And Ford has really been a leader. They've done a great job. But all of them. General Motors is doing really well. Stellantis is doing really well. We're really happy about it. I just wanted to build their product in the USA.
Okay, and you know what? That's fair. You know what? I have a feeling if the situation were reversed or the opportunity was there, Premier Ford, who is screaming about the auto industry and how we can share it and he wants to protect jobs, if there was an opportunity for Premier Ford to lure American automakers to Ontario, don't you think he would do it in an absolute heartbeat? That's what Donald Trump is doing. The CEO of Ford, Jim Farley is his name. After he appeared with the president, he did go on and do an interview on Fox News. Here's him talking a little bit more about the F-150.
I know there was news on the F-150 front and ramping up the manufacturing there, which a lot of Americans might not know about.
Yeah, so F-150 is now the 49th year the best-selling truck in our country, 44 years best-selling vehicle, and 100% of our F-150s are made in the U.S. Can't say that about the other domestic competitors. The president knows that. One of the reasons I think he came to us, and we are now adding an extra shift of production. He referred to it and his quote there, we're running the plant 24 hours a day, Laura, now 6 days a week, and that those 1,200 new jobs we're training, they start in February. That's because of a lot of the agenda and policy that the president and the auto companies work together with him on. And now it's becoming real. These jobs are becoming real.
One of the things that I'm noticing here, when you hear these CEOs of the big North American auto companies talking about their relationship with President Trump and talking about how much they're expanding, how they're hiring third shifts, and all these sort of things, one of the things that I'm hearing without them actually saying is they wanted this. You know, President Trump is going to wear it. That's fine. He was the one who brought in the tariffs. He was the one who wanted to bring the auto industry back to America. He's going to wear it. But I don't hear much objection from these CEOs. I don't hear any of them standing up and saying, all right, well, we will move to America, but we really liked being in Canada and we really liked our Canadian employees and we really liked that Canadian market. This is disappointing. We're being forced to do this. Sounds like they are ready, willing, and able to move. Maybe we should hear a little bit more from these auto companies and find out where they stand. Because right now, it kind of seems like they're all in on this. Now let's hear from President Trump on interest rates and his proposal to get rid of the chair of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell. Here's the latest on that situation.
We have a bad Fed chairman. He's bad in a lot of different ways, but he's bad because his interest rates were too high. And today we had a great inflation report. And today we had a really great growth report. So we have great growth and low inflation. And we're doing very well.
Do you think there's going to be a rate cut, though, with the inflation?
I don't know. With this guy, you don't know. He's got some problems. But what he also did, he's renovating a small building. It's the most expensive construction job in history. And it's only a renovation. I could have done that job for $25 million. They're spending billions and billions of dollars. He either doesn't know what he's doing or it's worse than that. And you know what I mean by what?
He meant corrupt. He meant to say, or he is very, very corrupt. This is wild. Okay, I know that people don't like hearing a whole ton of President Trump. I'm acutely aware of the fact that you do not like hearing too much Trump in Scott Fox After 9. But I'm going to do one, maybe two more from the president because I think this is an important one. We all know what happened in Minneapolis. We all know that mom was shot and killed by an ICE agent after she had a day of trying to obstruct ICE agents and when she started moving her vehicle right toward an ICE agent. The ICE agent pulled the trigger. She's dead. Tragedy. I think that was totally avoidable. President Trump got asked about that yesterday during an interview with CBS News.
The death of Renee Nicole Good. I've been speaking to her father, who is a big supporter of yours, like many Americans are, but he's heartbroken right now. I can understand that. He's heartbroken because his daughter is dead, that's obvious. He's also heartbroken because your administration so quickly has come out and said she's a domestic terrorist. What do you want to say to her father right now?
Well, I want to say to the father that I love all of our people. They can be on the other side, as you say, he might be on my side.
He is on your side.
And I think that's great. And I do. I think it's great. And I would bet you that she, under normal circumstances, was a very solid, wonderful person. But, you know, her actions were pretty tough. I mean, I've seen it many ways and many different shapes and forms. But the bottom line is, look, we have hundreds of thousands of murderers in our country, killers. ICE is trying to get them out. They were let in through an open border policy of sleepy Joe Biden. ICE is working very hard to get them out. Their job is being made very, very difficult. And, when you look at that tape, it can be viewed two ways, I guess. But when you look at the way that car was pulled away, there are a couple of versions of that tape that are very, very bad.
I think what he's suggesting is the tape does conclusively conclude that the woman was driving right at the ICE agent. I'm also glad to hear President Trump acknowledge you can see that two different ways. And there's a lot of people who see it different ways. I thought, you know what? She was driving right at that ICE agent. And the ICE agent probably had the justification to do what he did, even though, God, I wish he hadn't done that. You could also look at it and say, yeah, she was driving toward him, but at the end of the day, he could have just stepped to the right. He could have dove out of the way and they could have chased her. He didn't necessarily need to pull the trigger and kill her. That, I think, is what the big issue is here. Last thing I'm going to play on this episode of the pod is something from someone that I've got a lot of time and respect for. She is a former cabinet minister under Stephen Harper. Her name is Lisa Raitt, former member of parliament for Milton. She's also my former member of parliament. Lisa is a panelist from time to time on CBC and CTV. And yesterday, there was a really weird panel going on CBC. David Cochrane hosting this show, and David Cochrane is, well, you know what? We'll talk about David Cochrane after we hear how Lisa Raitt called him out. This is 2 minutes long, but I think it's 2 minutes that is worth hearing. Listen to this.
This is an old-fashioned conservation fight, on this particular issue. It's not about emissions and GHG for the most part. It's about what it would do to the natural habitat if something were to go wrong. So Lisa, the conversations will continue here, obviously, and I know you made the point about the signals it sends to investors and to capital, and they could be discouraging. So what is the next move? I mean, it was important for the Prime Minister and Minister Hodgson to meet with the people he met with today. What is the next move there if you're the government, industry, Alberta, and you want to try to move this along?
I think it's in the hands of Alberta, quite frankly. You need to be a proponent and you need to have a project and you need to advance it. I think my point, and I'm not deluded, Nathan, you know that.
Sorry, I wasn't calling you deluded. I apologize.
He meant diluted, like the bitumen. I don't know. Anyway, go ahead.
My point, not diluted. And my point being, gentlemen, that the reality is that, like I said, we don't necessarily have a project right now, but I also don't believe that we should not discuss the possibility of a project in the future. I don't like absolutisms. You're using the word impossible. You're saying the science will never change. Of course it can change. You can figure out a way to encapsulate it in clathrates if you want to try to figure out how to get rid of the bitumen so that it's not going to wash up where it is. There's always work that can be done. There can be mitigation done with the types of tankers going up and down. Impossible is not something that we should be considering, because the other side of the ledger is what happens if that becomes the only game in town? What happens if that becomes the most important thing that we could possibly provide to the world? And yet we're all sitting here today saying it's impossible. I don't think everything is impossible, other than David saying something nice about the Conservatives. That could be impossible.
Shots.
All right.
Well-deserved shot at David Cochrane. The CBC, I think everyone understands, the CBC is very, very left. They present the news from the angle of the left. They really, really go out of their way to demonize the right. They are gaslighters. They are full of, in my estimation, mis and disinformation. And if you don't believe me, don't just take my word for it. Google it. Google the number of retractions that the CBC does all the time. The CBC needs to be called out. To have a prominent conservative that is well respected across party lines on television, on the CBC, call out a CBC host and say, you're just not capable of saying something nice about the Conservatives. He needed to hear that. Canada needed to hear it. I hope that maybe that was a moment for David Cochrane and that dog and pony show that he airs every afternoon on the CBC. I think that's an opportunity for David to look in the mirror and ask himself, am I really trying to get my agenda across, or am I trying to present Canadians with factual news and letting them make up their own mind with no spin? Look in the mirror, David. There's a lot more you could do to provide a better service for Canadians. And until the CBC does that, defund the CBC is going to be on everybody's mind. Defund the CBC. Not cancel the CBC, defund it. If they think that there's such a demand for the kind of nonsense that they're putting out there, let them live off the ad revenue then. And if there's no ad revenue because sponsors don't want to get involved in that stuff, well, then the CBC is in a big problem. Maybe they should pivot and go back to just being a news organization instead of the propaganda arm of the Liberal Party of Canada. Friends, the next couple of days are going to be real interesting. Prime Minister Carney is in a difficult spot. I will acknowledge that. If he goes over there and works out a deal with the Chinese, Ontario Premier Doug Ford is going to be livid if the 100% tariff on Chinese-made EVs gets lifted. Premier Ford is going to be livid. And this is the Premier Ford that at every opportunity praises Mark Carney and says Mark Carney's doing a great job. He's going to freak out. If he doesn't do that deal, that means canola farmers in Saskatchewan are probably going to get screwed. If he doesn't do a deal, that means seafood manufacturers and harvesters and fishermen on the East Coast and West Coast, they're probably going to get screwed. Nobody is going to be completely happy from this. The other possibility is he does no deal at all. And then the country is going to be asking seriously, what is going on? What are we doing? Have yourselves a great day, friends. Thanks for your time today. Tomorrow and Friday are going to be electric. I think it's going to be some of the best stuff that we've seen in a while, and it's going to set up the next session of Parliament, which gets underway in about 2 weeks. I'll catch you right back here tomorrow with another episode of Scott Fox After 9.